don't build resilience in a crisis, you build the resilience before the crisis.
There's high levels of disengagement, high levels of stress. We hear more and more about burnout.
When times are good, poor leadership is hidden. And it's actually times like this year where the poor leadership gets exposed, and exposed pretty quickly.
Nobody asks for data now on whether smoking is good for you or not. Yeah, it's accept. I hope one day we'll get to the point where we say, yeah, we don't need to keep looking at the data. We accept it has a financial impact on our business, where positive impact if we can establish good well-being within the organization.
Welcome back to the mental space, and welcome to you who are joining us today on LinkedIn Live or indeed YouTube Live. Great to have your company with us today. Now, today is a special edition. We're going to be focusing on a few things like the Mental Awards, but also we want to focus on what 2026 has taught us, because I think for most of us, it's felt like this has been 2 years, but actually tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, we're into the second half of the year. And let's hope that the second half is going to be a little bit smoother ride than the first half. Well, to join me today to talk about the latest in workplace wellbeing, but also what these past 6 months have perhaps taught us. I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Paul Firth.
Thank you, Scott.
Managing Director and founder of Lyra, Wellbeing, MENA. Paul has been a judge for the Mental Awards, and we'll talk about his perspectives on that a bit later, for the last 2 years. And I'm delighted to say, as well, for the second year running, that Lyra Wellbeing MENA is a bronze sponsor of the awards. So I want to say thank you very much for the support. So we're just going to get into what this year has been teaching us. And as I say, you're kind of, the organization, you run Lyra Wellbeing, EAP, Employee Assistance Program. You're kind of where the rubber meets the road. And you'll be seeing how employees have been faring and facing up in the past 6 months. What are you seeing out there?
It's been obviously a different experience for us all with the conflict that we had in the region. So obviously we've seen significant impact that's brought about. I think unfortunately it's sort of just compounded on the sort of workplace environments we're seeing at the moment and have done for a number of years now, where there's high levels of disengagement, high levels of stress. We hear more and more about burnout. And I think then obviously, at the early part of this year going into the conflict situation, that just brought about additional challenges, experiences that most of us had not experienced before in terms of, managing through a challenging time like that. And, from a workplace perspective, that was just adding additional challenges from the workplace perspective, in terms of the anxiety, the uncertainty as an employee, in terms of, for a lot of families, some of the families had, gone home to get out of the region. So that just was the added pressure, from an employee's perspective, in terms of worrying that family are back somewhere else. Family worrying about leaving the employee here. The uncertainty around what is actually going to happen. And so all this was just sort of, feeding the frustration, the stresses, the anxiety from an employee's perspective.
I mean, it feels like this conversation's sharper this year because of what's happened. And Neri, hi, and also Faisal, thanks for joining us. Faisal, I hope my voice is a bit better. I knew I was going to forget one thing doing a live broadcast, and the microphone is a pretty key piece, but thank you for the reminder. So hopefully that's coming in. If anyone is tuning in, so Neri or Fadus, please, you can post questions, you can post your thoughts, you can take the mickey out of me, or you can tell Paul how handsome he's looking. But this is for you as well. So this is a two-way conversation. So share your thoughts and we'll get Paul's thoughts on that as well. But as I say, it's been a sharper conversation this year. How is it, how is that situation? Have you seen organizations getting some things right? And have you seen some organizations getting things very, very wrong? Because sometimes in a economic plus geopolitical situation, the temptation is to kind of like cut all costs, but that can actually be counterproductive at times.
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is some positives and negatives in terms of successes, or I don't like to use the term failure, but things that maybe didn't work. It was a new experience for everybody. So when we have situations like that, it is an element of, well, we're doing what we believe is the best thing to do.
Yeah.
The outcome of that, in some cases, will be very positive, but there's always the potential that what you put in place
Yeah.
for the right reasons didn't necessarily work as effectively as you might have thought. I mean, obviously, during that time, working remotely became another requirement again.
Yeah.
We've had that experience, 3-4 years ago with
Yeah.
COVID, and this was a completely new scenario, but it was, bringing along similar challenges in terms of how do you maintain business normality? Business has to get done. We can't just stop, business, but recognizing the challenges that our employees have in terms of that business continuity, which comes along with the sort of psychological challenges, uncertainty.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge for even for us as an organization in our field. I had to consider various things in terms of supporting the employees while still maintaining we were supporting our clients.
Yeah.
And I have to say it was quite a nice feeling that some of our clients were reaching out to us and saying, we know you're supporting us. How are things for you? I hope everything's going for you and your team.
That's
which
good.
was nice. Yeah.
I was at it was the Middle East PR Association Leadership Majlis just last week, and it was a really fascinating thing because a few different organizations, big organizations, were there talking about how they had responded, and it was funny that they kind of like dusted off the COVID sort of crisis
Yeah.
playbook, but a lot of them were talking about how they shifted to external communication to internal communication because obviously maybe customers weren't buying, but it was more about business continuity, as you
Yeah.
say, but also talking and trying to build that trust inside the organization to the employees and support the employees. Which I thought was great, but here's the frustration: shouldn't that be something they were already doing? And it's funny that internal comms comes when the crisis happens, and it feels like the best businesses, the stronger businesses, were doing that already. They were already building the culture prior to the crisis.
Totally agree. Every organization has to respond to a crisis.
Yeah.
And yes, there are organizations that, as you say, will make moves to establish the right workplace culture, the right environment. Those organizations would have found it a little bit easier in terms of managing through situations like this.
Yeah.
We had a number of organizations that were reaching out to us for the first time during the conflict, believing that they had to do something.
Yeah.
And then when there was the discussion around the ceasefire, the conversations sort of slowed down, and it was okay. So this was very much a response to, we have to do something right now. There isn't the same need now, so maybe we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
It's disappointing to see that.
Yeah.
But we can't force anybody to to sort of establish well-being in the right way. We hope they will, and we'll support them if they do.
I mean, times like this, there's one word that gets bandied around a lot, and that's obviously resilience.
Yeah.
And I was on another podcast with a great lady from Bayet and Dubizzle, Susan, and she was also saying, like, you don't build resilience in a crisis, you build the resilience before the crisis.
Absolutely.
And it's fascinating. Kitaki, please, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Asking a couple of questions, and thanks for getting involved. Everyone who is tuning in, keep your questions coming. How are organizations managing business continuity, restructuring, and employee well-being all at once? And also, do organizations actually have the budgets for employee well-being, given the economic impact of the conflict in the region? And I've got some thoughts on the economic argument, as you know. But organizations managing business continuity, restructuring, employee well-being. One of the organizations, and I won't say which one it was at this MEPRA Majlis, was actually saying that while a lot of the organizations had lent into flexibility and remote working, because they had a lot of frontline staff that were out with the public. So they turned around to all their admin, to their HR, to their C-suite, to all of those people that weren't from frontline, and said, you can't work remotely. If these guys have to be there, you have to come in as well, which is a really interesting thing, because you have to have built a particular kind of culture to actually make a decision like that? Because and in some ways it feels kind of fair, but and they were basically saying, if you're struggling, we'll deal with this on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
But the example we should set is, but that's an example of, I suppose, a strong culture.
Absolutely. And it's, you have to have the right environment to be able to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. So
You have to
if
have built that trust or
that trust,
Yeah.
that engage, when we talk about engagement, that the employees trust and believing whatever strategy you're going to put in place to deal with a certain situation like that, that they trust in that. A level of autonomy for them as well, in terms of, clearly every business is different. So if you've got frontline workers, as you say, you can't just say, well, we'll all work remotely.
Yeah.
So it's really what will work specifically in your business sector.
Yeah.
And the more you can get employees to engage and feel part of decision making, ultimately the decisions are made by the powers that be within the organization.
Yeah.
But if you feel you can contribute to that in some way, if I look at what we did within Lyra Wellbeing MENA, we had some individuals who were saying, can I exit and work from my home country? Not necessarily something we'd thought about, but that was something that more than one employee was asking about. And if their role allowed them to do that, then why not? The challenge with that is it brings other issues, potential issues, because you're then getting to the realms of other tax implications for those individuals now that relocating. So all of a sudden, something that appears quite simple, suddenly there are other factors that come
Different
into play
layers.
and different layers. And then you've got to consider, okay, is that something that's practical for us to do? And is it feasible also from a whole range of other factors that come into play?
I'm going to ask you a question, which I pretty much know the answer to, and you're going to go yes. And I'll try and phrase it not as a yes/no question, but has this crisis? I mean, again, we were talking. I was talking on a podcast with Cigna Healthcare. They did the Pulse survey, which was taken just sort of 3 or 4 weeks into the crisis, and the big thing that came out of that was actually, in terms of personal safety, in terms of emotional safety, actually the vast majority of people felt very safe and secure because of the great communication and, let's face it, the great job that the UAE government were doing. But at the same time, two things can be true at the same time, but they were also job security fears, financial fears, and that workplace conversation was a lot shakier. And on that podcast, one of the things that came out was also this idea that when things are good, and let's face it, if we look at 2025, depending on what sector you were in, it was kind of like that. So when times are good, poor leadership is hidden. And it's actually times like this year where the poor leadership gets exposed and exposed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
What should organizations be doing right now? Like, if we talk about opportunity, particularly, there's the old phrase, every crisis is an opportunity. What should organizations be doing right now to kind of just look in the mirror and go, all right, what's 2026 taught us so far?
I think we've touched on it in terms of, I mentioned autonomy. It's the balance between demands and how that gets delivered. Yeah. So a business will set demands on middle management and the employee base in terms of meeting the business objectives.
Yeah.
The more that you can get the employees and middle management to feel that they have the autonomy to say, okay, well, for us to achieve that, this is the approach we can take.
Yeah.
And they feel part of that decision-making process. I think that for me is one of the things to take out of the last sort of 6 to 7 months. So I think that's a key factor for me. Psychological safety, I know that gets talked about now. I've been talking for many years about it.
You have.
But that again is really around if you get the environment right, where employees feel that they can put their hands up, challenge, raise questions, maybe come up with some ideas. Some ideas might be quite crazy on initially, but they feel comfortable about putting them forward without any concern that they're going to be humiliated or viewed in a negative way.
Yeah.
Because employees will come up with some great ideas and some great solutions. So as an employer, why wouldn't we want to hear those?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying that you take it all on board, but some of the ideas will be potentially. But
Well, that's a class. I mean, it's almost like exposing what has always been a classic, almost failure of leadership when they don't listen. They go, "This is what a really great guy Jeff was talking in another podcast we were doing. We say it's time for us to stop doing well-being to that and actually figuring out what they need, and depending on what industry they're in, they need different things.
Yeah.
But that whole like, what's going to work? Particularly in a situation like this, what do you actually need? On the front line. Not what we think you need, but what do you actually need? And that, one, there needs to be the trust, perhaps, to have that two-way
Absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah.
And is that, and that this year seems to me almost like the word of the year is that trust.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be anything major. I mean, we had our team meeting here this morning.
Yeah.
We have it every Tuesday morning. I don't run the team meeting. Yeah. So an individual in the team every month is nominated. They run the team meeting.
Yeah.
They pull the agenda together.
Yeah.
I put what I would like on the agenda, but it's not my agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole team contributes, whether it's our clinical operations team, whether it's the account management team, whether it's the learning and development team, they all have the opportunity to input to, what are we going to do from a business perspective? What are the new ideas? Most of the team come up with the ideas in terms of new services, new initiatives that we're going to do in terms of, promoting what we do and helping clients to promote and driving well-being within the organization. Yes, I'm the MD, but I don't sit here thinking I'm going to come up with all the ideas and the solutions. We do it as a team.
Yeah.
Now, the more you can develop that culture, then I just see it as a win.
Democratizing innovation in a way. Communication. A few comments coming in. Thank you very much for your observations. Anamika, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right as well there. Thank you for joining us on LinkedIn Live. Scott, strangely enough, strong economies pour in money on executive well-being and employee well-being programs, whereas anxiety economies usually begin by cutting budgets from precisely the same verticals. Help is taken away when it's needed most. I think we'd both 100% agree with that, really.
Absolutely.
Particularly when we look at, and again, we were talking about the economics, that I'm going to ask you, like, you tell me, about what, the ROI of well-being versus the risk of not doing it from a financial perspective. When you sit down with businesses, when you sit down with your clients that you support, what's the message to them on that?
First of all, we need to get to a point where we don't see well-being as a cost to business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a cost, but not a cost to business. It's accepted that it's part of the operational strategy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Health and safety, we don't look at health and safety as a cost to business.
No.
It's part of the business strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We're fully behind that as any organization from a health and safety perspective. So why would we view well-being any differently? There are safety factors around poor well-being within an organization. So, that will have an impact. And we talk about psychological safety from the perspective that we've just spoken about, but also there's the psychological risk within an organization.
Yeah.
Accidents and injuries within the organization happen when people are not fully engaged on what they're doing. Now in certain industry sectors, that's critical.
Really dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah. But in any industry, whatever sector you're in, it has an impact on your overall business performance, your productivity, and your bottom line profit.
Yeah.
So I hope at some stage we get to the point, nobody asks for data now on whether smoking is good for you or not. Yeah. It's accepted.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I hope one day we'll get to the point where we say, we don't need to keep looking at the data because all the data's out there. We accept it has a financial impact on our business, where positive impact if we can establish good well-being within the organization. So fine, let's go do it. Yeah.
I'm going to give a shameless plug as well for at Mentl. We wrote recently a big sort of playbook called Moving the Needle, and that focused on some of the best entries in the Mentl Awards every year, which Paul is a judge of, and Lyra being a kind sponsor of again this year. And Dulsco was one of the winners, and they came through because it very clearly was like safe to speak, and it was that people could come forward and say, because they were operational, and also there was that element of physical harm, if not fully present, to go, I'm not in the right mind for this today.
Yeah.
And I know that for me, but also the safety of my colleagues around me, that I need to be able to put my hand up and say, I'm not 100% today. And they've created that atmosphere of psychological
Fantastic.
safety,
Yeah.
and also you're not penalized if you turn around and do that. So that whole idea of safe to speak. I've got to bring Rochelle in, Dr. Rochelle Cairns. Hello, Dr. Rochelle Cairns. How are you? Are you over in Australia? Are you joining us from down under? Welcome. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn Live as well. Dr. Rochelle is asking, what suggestions do you have for organizations to demonstrate trust in employees and build a culture of trusting upwards to managers, sideways to peers, and trust for those that they manage, and how may that lead to improved mental health well-being? And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you're the manager, and there's loads of studies actually out there that if you're in middle management, you often have some of the most negative mental health outcomes inside the organizations because you have responsibilities up to your leadership, to your board, to the P&L, to the performance of your team, but responsibilities down as well. So that puts you in a really critical space. And I think there was a piece of research that said, actually, if I'm an employee and I walk into a company and I think I've got 100% autonomy over my well-being in there, actually I've got 30%, and my line manager has an outsized impact on my well-being in the workplace. So that, again, coming back to the word trust and what Rochelle's asking as well, how do we build that? How do managers build the culture of trust? How does the leadership build that culture of trust? Because it has to, I know we talk about trickle down, and I ask really long questions, I'm aware of that, but it also needs to trickle up, doesn't it?
Yeah. There's no simple answer to that one.
Oh, come on.
But I think I call it the sort of middle management bottleneck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the top down, the demands are there, and then it's the middle management now that is going to engage and communicate with the workforce in terms of meeting those demands. The middle management will experience, some of the challenges that at that level, the people they're managing are experiencing. So again, we put a lot of pressure on that middle management layer.
Yeah.
I think there is an expectation now, as well-being is becoming more understood and accepted within the workplace. There's added pressure being put on middle management in terms of you need to show empathy, you need to be, sort of psychological coaches in a way.
Yeah.
Fine, off you go,
But they don't
do your stuff.
But again, that needs support though.
It
as
needs
well, doesn't
support.
Like,
It needs more training, support, education, helping them to be able to do that. They're not there to be proxy psychologists.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. But we can help them in terms of identifying some of the subtle signs that you can see in individuals that may just lead you to question, okay, it's okay to not be okay?
Yeah.
So what's going on for that person at the moment?
I'm going to come back to that. I want to ask a question on that in a second. I'm just going to come back to Dr. Rochelle, who is indeed in Australia. So welcome to the great continent. Such is the reach of mental space. But Dr. Rochelle has made a great point as well about the monetary cost to an organization through disengaged staff is huge, and the recruitment is expensive. But the converse is true. And again, go and check out, if you've not already signed up for our community at mentalcommunity.com, you can download our free copy of this Moving the Needle playbook. But we've also done exclusive research for this region around the cost to business per hour, even from disengaged employees versus the reward that's on offer. And to kind of put it into quantifiable terms, here in the UAE, businesses on an annual basis could be losing up to $45 billion a year.
As I've said before, the data's been there for years.
Flip side, as Dr. Rochelle says, converse being true, embrace well-being. There's $60 billion there on the table. That's the potential for organizations that embrace well-being. So yeah, the data is there. And Dr. Rochelle, thanks for reminding me, because it's one of my favorite statistics. I love trotting that one out. But to come back to where we were saying, like, for managers to see some of the signs and to be able to have that. And it's not just the managers, but also, as Rochelle was saying also earlier, peer to peer. What are some of those signs? What, for a manager or even for a leadership right now, what should they be looking for?
Everybody's different. Everybody's an individual. So you're really looking for subtle changes to the norm with that person that you're considering.
Yeah.
So it may be that, somebody who performs in terms of their work is always pretty much 100% accurate all the time. They're always on time with whatever work you give to them. You don't have to chase them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden now you're finding 1 or 2 errors. You may be now just having to remind them about the deadline that you set for them because, that's getting close or it's gone beyond. These are subtle changes that, and consistent is the other word. Not, we can all have an off day. So it's where you see subtle changes on a consistent level that makes you just think, that's not Scott. That's not the Scott I normally see. So why might that be? Okay, then you're going to have to hopefully get into the conversation to find out how we might be able to help Scott. What's going on in Scott's world that is,
I like the way I'm the one who's struggling.
what's going on in Scott's world
Yeah.
that is contributing to those factors.
It's, I mean, Firdous, Firdous, thank
I'm
you for,
assuming
I think Firdous belongs to us all, don't we? We're all Firdous at the same time. He was talking about burnout being one of the major psychological risks. But I just find this whole kind of conversation really, really fascinating around, so how do we get people to kind of come forward? What's the start? If you were to talk to a leader right now, just give me like a start, continue. What are you seeing out there where you think leaders should actually go, look, that's wrong, stop it. This is something you need to start. This is something that we just need to continue.
Good question.
There's usually one in an hour of the podcast.
I think back to what I was saying at the beginning, start to see well-being as not something, it's the norm. Yeah. And it's important that I think we recognize that. So don't see this as something that's been forced on you through the organization.
Yeah.
Well-being's now part of the organization. I have to do it. I'm a big fan of self-care. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're going to really be successful with this, then practice what we preach. Okay.
Yeah.
So, there's no point from a business perspective saying, well, the demands of the business are this. Therefore, I expect you to work. I don't expect you to work long hours, but I end up doing exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to work in long hours myself, and then I'm expecting that from my team. So setting boundaries. Yeah. Those boundaries used to be there, before we had the technology.
Physically they were there. Yeah. There was no, they were built into
I'm
the
old
system.
enough when, before mobile phones and technology like that. So when you left,
I was talking to a Gen Z the other day and trying to explain to them what a fax machine is, because that was the most sophisticated piece of technology in the office when I started working.
But we had very clear boundaries.
We did, yeah.
You walked out of the office door and that was work done. Yeah. You went home and home life was completely separate. We don't have those boundaries now. Those boundaries just don't exist. And so it's important that as managers, we recognize that. We have demands to meet, but we have employees that are working either in the office or remotely or hybrid,
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we recognize some of the additional challenges that brings. That there isn't any defined line between, the end of the day and your personal life.
Yeah. I mean, that whole idea of work-life balance is actually a bit of a myth these days, because
Work-life integration is what I prefer to talk about.
And what happens in the office comes home with you, and what happens at home comes into the office with you, and all that kind of thing.
And we have our mobiles. We're 24/7 contactable if we don't manage it.
Now, just to focus on that middle management, almost leadership as well. Traditionally, too many leaders look like me or you, which is a little bit long in the tooth.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well, good luck. You're looking very handsome today. But I know, you can pay me later. But this whole kind of concept that their leaders or their managers are processors, and that's what they were hired to do. They were never trained to be leaders of people. And increasingly, I know that AI puts more demands on us, and AI is almost, we thought, oh, this is going to make life easy for us. Actually, no, this is going to just means that bosses now think we can do more work. But within all of that, if managers are no longer having to manage processes so much because AI is looking after that, is that the opportunity for them to retrain and go, I mean, some leaders I've worked with were never going to be good with people, but that's increasingly the management role. it's to facilitate, it's to look after, it's to develop, it's to grow, it's to foster a culture of innovation, as opposed to this process needs to get from there to there, because a lot of that can now be automated.
Yeah, whether it's automated or not, that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
But we ultimately come back to we're managing a team of human beings at the end of the day. Yeah, and for all the things we've just discussed, there are factors now that we didn't experience previously before.
Yeah.
So as a manager, being a manager today is very different to 20, 30 years ago when I was in management. Then it was more at I would say at a basic level, which was the demands are there, and a good manager makes sure the demands get met and the work gets done.
Yeah.
We have to deal with a lot. We have to be more empathetic today. Sounds easy, but within the team, I have a relatively small team. There's 20 of us.
Yeah.
But they're 20 individuals. Yeah. So you can't operate in the same way with that group as one homogenous group. Yeah, they're all 20 individuals.
Yeah.
And when you take into account then in terms of, I come back to again, self-care. If I am honestly going to truly be mindful of you as a team member's well-being, but I don't bother myself, then again, it's the trust element.
Well, you're not modeling.
If you're not modeling it, well, then
Yeah.
why would you expect me to do the same? Or,
Yeah.
So we've got to be mindful of how we position that. We've got to be mindful of looking after ourselves. It's not about being selfish. It's about saying, if you go on
self-care is not selfish.
No, if you go on a plane, going through the security, the safety exercise at the beginning of the flight, what do they talk about when the mask drops down?
Yeah,
you put yours on first before you look after your wife and kids or whoever. And it's the same principle. Self-care puts you in a better position to manage that within your team.
Another good point from Dr. Rochelle. It's great to have a specialist with us today as well.
We've got 3 on the podcast.
Well, 2. But and Dr. Rochelle was saying encouraging and supporting annual and personal leave is vital, and not just time off where work is jammed in before and after the leave, but actually handing over and staff being able to actually take their leave. With the work that you do and the organizations you do, where are we on that? Because I have seen and some great entries in the awards where they've gone, no, leave has to be taken. And it isn't just around, sometimes there are business critical periods of time, but at the same time, it's not that don't bank it up. It's how important is that leave in terms?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My team will tell you that I'm a big enforcer of you take your annual leave.
Yeah.
And your annual leave is annual leave for you to recharge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So occasionally, depending on the pressures of work, team member might say, I'm going to take my laptop with me just in case. And I refuse.
Yeah.
No, your laptop's not going on your annual leave. That's not what that leave is for. I often say, if we can put the same amount of effort and focus into ourselves in terms of leave is a time to recharge as we put into our mobile phones. Yeah. Guaranteed we all have a plug at the side of the bed and we all plug our phone in.
Yeah.
And we cannot imagine waking up the next morning with a 2% charge on our phone, because that phone will be of no use to us. The same mindset, whether it's sleep, whether it's taking time out from work for annual leave, that's our recharge time. Vitally important.
You could be proud of your brother as well, Dr. Rochelle, because Paul just reminded me, in our playbook, we've got 40 different tactics from 40 different organizations. But Scott Cairns, who runs Creation Business Consultants, one of the things that stood out for judges in the awards was the no laptop. You can't take your work laptop home, which they were really impressed with as a plan. I'm going to talk to you about the awards if you can, because we kind of crossed the threshold of the first sort of 35 minutes. And I guess we'll hang around for another 15, 20 minutes. But just, around the awards, you've been involved in the awards now for 2 years as a judge. Yeah. What stood out to you? So the best entries that you saw, what could they teach other organizations?
I think, it's 12 months ago now since I was judging them. So I was trying to think.
And it has been a busy year. I will give you that.
In terms of the awards and the entrance, I think from memory, it was amazing how some of the awards stood out. I could actually feel something within the the paper that they put forward and the
Oh, yeah.
justification for it, you
It's
could
almost a
really,
passion.
you could see, you could feel the vibe, the
Yeah.
passion. And I think where companies can involve employees as part of their entry, employee input, I think that's a big factor. And I think don't see the initiative don't need to be big, massive initiatives that you're putting in place. We've just mentioned about, annual leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, simple things like that. There are lots of things you can do from a well-being perspective that actually don't cost money. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's back to the culture, it's back to the environment that you're breeding within the organization. You don't necessarily need money to achieve that. So that for me is I think it's the vibe that I got from certain entries that just stood out, that you could feel that they believed in what they were doing.
Is that one? I don't know, because I'm trying to think, if this conversation, if anyone's kind of thinking of entering the Mental Awards, and we'll put the mentalawards.com anyway, you'll find us there. I'm going to ask you to do a bit of a soft sell for that in a moment. But if we're thinking about what organizations can kind of like adopt, I mean, we saw some great examples of some of the best entries being around well-being champions, not necessarily at the top, but just finding those people that are passionate within the organization and then giving them autonomy in a way. I mean, what's your experience been, with some of the best workplaces that you've worked for, or how important is that to find those champions inside your business?
A part of what we do is training around, we have a training program, mental health and wellbeing in the workplace, which is about training and helping identify wellbeing champions.
Yeah.
And then training them with some of the soft skills to identify some of the subtle changes I was talking about. I think the first thing we need to understand is there is still stigma attached to mental health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, data shows that, 9 out of 10 people historically have concern that if they raise their hands and say, I've got a mental health issue, that they'll experience stigma.
Yeah.
So why would I want to put my hands up and even suggest that I'm experiencing some mental health challenges at the moment? So if I can find people within an organization that I understand have had some training and will be more aware of maybe the challenges I'm currently experiencing, have more empathy to what I'm going to maybe have a conversation about, then I'm more likely to reach out to them. So I think that's the thing I would say.
I'm going to step off the awards for a second and go back into workplace culture, because Isabella has posted the question. Isabella, thank you very much for your question. She's saying, on a lighter note, the flyer mentions World Cup late nights. I put that in there because it's breaking me. Sunday night, 3 a.m. But yeah, there will be a lot of people out there right now that actually are, like a little bit afraid, because quite right, quite understandably, they're dialing into the World Cup. What approaches can managers take to balance flexibility around major global events with maintaining productivity? I like that. Major global events. Isabella, you phrased that really, really well. So obviously the World Cup is one, but yeah.
Yeah, it may very well be, if a team was playing early hours of that morning, that maybe you're not setting business objectives too early on the following day. Things like that. And that's just one example of things that can, just part of everyday life, that can have an impact on our sleep. Sleep is vital.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's critical to our overall well-being and how we feel. We know if we don't have a great night's sleep, we don't feel great the next morning. And it's not, there's always the argument, does it have to be 8 hours? Is it 8 hours of sleep? No, not really. Everybody's different. I think from a sleep perspective, it's really about changes in your sleep pattern. That's where you would highlight the triggers. So I think, again, it's about flexibility, autonomy,
And that kind of, I suppose,
empathy.
again, sort of knowing your people in a way, really, isn't it? Because you'll know who's, I imagine this morning, my wife was really wanting Germany to do well. She supports Germany just to annoy the hell out of me. But they obviously went out this morning, the Netherlands. Yeah, but then you'll have some Morocco fans this morning as well, working in the region that wanted to watch the game, and they'll be jubilant, that sort of thing. But it's just knowing who your people are and what
Absolutely. And recognizing that everybody's different.
Yeah.
I maybe can stay up till 3 a.m. watching football and be fine the next day.
I am not one of those people.
Well, I'm not in truth, but you know, there may be people like that. But the reality is, we're talking about football, but it can be anything.
Yeah.
You know, even during the conflict period that we had,
Yeah, people
you know,
were struggling with sleep.
people were struggling with sleep.
Yeah.
It affected everybody differently. So it's I think it's like anything. It's treating each individual as an individual, and the skill is the empathy as a manager to recognize that and decide how you can manage that situation.
Do we need to recognize as well, like, because it's kind of too, and again, this whole thing where it used to be one size fits all, and it seemed like it was, you know, as you say, being in management was simple. It's do this. If
Yeah.
you didn't do it, you know, you were for the high rate. Whereas now, you know, management, leadership, workplace culture, it's very much three-dimensional. As you say, you've got 20 different people in your team. The trick is trying to get those 20 people just to not all be the same, but maybe just face the same direction. And how do you get them to all work towards that one purpose, which is productivity, as far as an organization is concerned? So well, give me some thoughts around that secret sauce, because we are trying to unite different people from different backgrounds, different religions, different ages,
cultures.
different cultures
Yeah.
around a common purpose.
Yeah. Do we really want everybody the same?
No.
I would argue not. Identify people as they are, that they're different, they have different skill sets. You know, some people would have a preference for more structured management, to say, be clear about what you want me to do there and give me a timeline, and that's what I want, and I'll work to that.
Yeah.
We have others who want more autonomy. Yeah. And we just need to be mindful of that. You know, certainly, you know, when we're talking about the different generations now, then, you know, autonomy is just an accepted part for the younger generation. You know, I want to be able to use my own thought process, my skill set. I want to be able to make my own decisions to a degree.
Why do you think management's so resistant to that? Because, you know, I think particularly these days that innovations is, you know, is the key to long-term business success. It's not just stagnating and doing one thing. Well, you know, the Kodaks or the Nokias of the world that never changed and then died. But why are we still at a management level still so afraid of this, or still so unable to foster that? I mean, I guess I would say the strongest elements in the mental awards were those organizations that did foster that spirit of innovation and communication and psychological safety.
It's a new challenge.
We fear change.
But not everybody does, but we're human beings. Most of us are, you know, aren't necessarily comfortable with change, but there are plenty of people out there that, if there isn't change, that's a frustration for them.
Yes.
Yep. They thrive on change. And then you've probably lots of us somewhere in the middle. We're okay with change. We can cope with it. So again, it's back to, I suppose as a manager, it's a lot easier just if I can get away with treating everybody as one the same, then that makes life easy for me. But the outcome in terms of performance and everything, no, that's not going to work. It might have done in the past. Yeah, 30 years ago, Nokia was fine. Nokia that we know in today's market, you know, it has a reliability element to it, but it doesn't do anywhere near
what it was. It's
what
the giant.
You know, the iPhone and other, you know, sort of Samsung, not advertising any make or model, but, you know,
Or the
we
phones
expect more.
are available,
We
or something
expect
like that.
more of technology, then why shouldn't we expect more of management in terms of how they respond and work with us?
I'm going to just kind of link back to the World Cup as well. If you are the manager of a football club right now, you know, you don't try and get everybody to do the same role. Every player on the field is playing a different role, and you don't put someone who's a left footer on the right hand side, or someone that can't catch a ball in the goal. You know, it's trying to fit the roles and the individuals to the roles that they're brilliant, and surfacing that passion, ability.
And a team of 11 individuals never wins anything.
He's almost gone in with a mic drop moment there. They think it's all over, but it
do,
isn't yet, because we've still got another about 10 minutes or so. If you want to ask Paul some questions as well, or you just want to post some thoughts, please keep them coming in. Thanks for staying with us. Really appreciate your company today. Also, I just want to come back to the awards as well, because, you know, for me, the awards, the mental awards, are not about handing someone a trophy one night of the year, but it's about, you know, the work, recognizing the work they've been doing. But, this is the second year that you've been a judge. This is the second year that Lyra Wellbeing is supporting as a bronze sponsor. Why was that important to you?
Important to me, both from a Lyra perspective and from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
Now, I came here 16 years ago. Mental health, not only not on the agenda, you just don't mention it. Yeah. Well-being, not on the agenda, and we pay their salary and people do a job.
Yeah.
What
They're
do you
lucky to
mean
get.
by
They're lucky to have a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the environment I came into. So, the first number of years, it was really around trying to educate what I mean, by mental health and well-being, the importance of that from a workplace perspective. So I felt not only as an ambassador, I was, I suppose, starting a movement. And I've always been, in my time here, I've always been open to engaging with people that were trying to achieve the same objective.
Mhm.
You being one, in terms of what you've done over the years with mental. So I've always been keen to try and support people like that are really just jumping on the same bus as me and going to the same destination. So, that it was a bit of a no-brainer from my perspective.
I suppose as well. I mean, but it is an interesting one because you see there within any organization as well. You have people there that are tasked with looking after well-being, and that in itself can be quite a challenging role, particularly in organizations where maybe the leadership aren't as bought in, or maybe they're tick boxing. I think one of the things I love most about the awards is the way that I know they say it takes a village. When you get to those awards and you see last year we had 400 people who all care about well-being, that sense of, well, there is a community out there and there are people, and it's been interesting this year to actually dive in and write this playbook around moving the needle around the awards to go, actually, there is quite a lot being done out there. And you must see this through the Lyra lens, that actually in some organizations, there are some really good things happening. We just perhaps don't talk about them enough.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
don't celebrate them enough.
No, we see, we've over 700 corporate clients, and we see, if we're talking about our EAP engagement levels from like 5 or 6% up to like 60%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the EAP that we're delivering is fundamentally the same. So what's driving, whether you're 5 or 6 or anywhere in between, or up to 60%, is primarily the company culture. And what, as an organization, are they truly living and breathing well-being as part of that business strategy, or is it more of a tick box?
Yeah.
Our organizations that we work with are doing some amazing things, and we're actually just running a program at the moment in terms of, to our clients, to say, look, here's a bit of an objective. Let's talk about what you're currently doing within your own organization.
Yeah.
Prepare a video, put something together along the lines of mental, in terms of not an award as such, but what are you doing to drive engagement?
I think that's an interesting thing, that because I think this is almost like the central challenge of the awards, in a way, of the mental awards, is, what are you doing? Now tell me the story of what you're doing.
Yes.
And actually, are you capturing all of that story as you go? Because so many organizations I see, like, you never focus on that storytelling bit, but it's like, how do you build a culture of psychological safety, or how do you finish a book if you never actually capture anything along the way and tell that story and celebrate those milestones? So I think if it was to build boil the awards down to it, it's capturing the story of what you're doing well, and then telling the organization, because then other people can read your story, get inspired by that story, and maybe take some tactics. And that's, that rising tide lifts all boats, or boats. It's boats, lifts all boats. I've probably lost my point there, but no, but it is that kind of, like, as you say, the engagement. So, and what is the difference then between that 6% and the 60%? What do you see the 60% doing different to the 6%?
At the sort of 30, 40, 50, 60%, you generally see whatever they do within the organization, well-being is just automatically part of it. It's not does this sit under the umbrella of well-being? No, it doesn't. Okay. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, from a business strategic point of view that they're implementing, well-being automatically becomes part of that process. You probably feel it when you can feel it when you go into a building. different companies, you can get a vibe of healing,
Yeah,
and you think
definitely.
this have been not just the surroundings.
Yeah.
There is often a vibe you think this feels a nice place.
Yeah.
I could probably work here.
I always think that's like it's not quantifiable, but it is quantifiable at the same time about how it feels good
Yeah.
to be in a business where they make the effort to make sure that you feel good in there. Even and if you're the leader of an organization, it actually feels good as a leader to walk down your corridors and see vibrant conversation and see energy and see people smiling,
Smiles on the faces.
smiles
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
faces.
yeah.
And actually, when you're looking at it, you should be perhaps looking at it in two ones. One, emotionally, that's good for me.
Yeah.
But two, financially, that's actually really good for the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're getting towards the end of the time now. Addressing AI-driven, fiducia here again for us. Addressing AI-driven workforce anxiety is a growing psychosocial risk. That's an interesting one, isn't it? AI-driven workforce anxiety. What are your thoughts around that? Because as I was saying before, it's a really interesting one. It's a great tool for productivity, but it's a bit like, you remember, I always remember the kind of inbox zero, and we were told to chase inbox zero. In fact, all you ever do is create more space for more work to fill that. So you're actually on a conveyor belt that just gets faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, good question. It's the uncertainty of it all, isn't it? AI's here.
Yeah.
It's, we can't get away from that. AI has always been positioned as it's not necessarily taking your job away, but it'll take away the mundane tasks to free you up to do more things.
I wanted to do more things.
Well, and that's the question then, is what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit like, for me, it's a bit like, the move from 5 days working week to 4 days. Yeah. Okay. In principle, that's fine. And there's data to show that there are benefits in doing that. But simply just moving from 5 to 4 on its own, you potentially can have more negatives. What you don't want is 5 days work going into 4 days. So as part of that move from 5 to 4,
You have to examine how the work is delivered,
how the work gets delivered, what
structured.
the working structures.
Yeah.
So you have to look at the bigger piece. It's the same with AI, okay, it may have benefit there. What does that mean overall? And if I'm just replacing the mundane with increased work of other forms, then
we come back to burnout, which
We come
Fiducia was
back to
talking
burnout.
about earlier in the podcast. I'm going to be selfish and ask you, if an organization hasn't entered the awards to date, and this year is our 4th year. Last year we had more than 250,000 employees represented across the region at the awards last year. But if an organization hasn't entered yet, why should they? What do you see the benefit of?
first of all, do
Yeah.
enter. Again, to be potentially successful and winning. Everybody wants to win awards. Everybody wants to be recognized. Everybody wants to be appreciated for things that they do. I think if you're putting yourself in for an award, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be this major initiative that you've put in. It can be very simple things.
Yeah.
But you can evidence that it's added real value to you and your organization. There are multiple business sectors, that the awards are in. So there will be an award
I think
that
we're trying to
suits
get
you.
every single one already.
Yeah.
But, and it's good to know that you've got 700 clients, so I can expect 700 entries this year. That's going to be brilliant.
We do promote it.
I know you do.
Yeah.
I know you do.
We do.
I know. Thank you very much for that. And again, we do appreciate the support. This year as well, actually, just to say, you do still have time to actually write your own story for the awards. Entries are open. Go to mentlawards.com. We will also put the link in the show notes. But the deadline is not until the end of September. So you could start something now and still have meaningful data by the time the deadline's up. I think that's also an important thing that stood out to me in the awards as well, is actually not just intention, but measuring the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. You always need data.
And I think perhaps that's the biggest opportunity for right now, even for well-meaning companies, is to go, right, we're going to do this, but how can we capture what we're doing?
Absolutely. Like anything, you need the data outcomes to support it. I think the other thing as well I would always promote is it's a time to reflect and be open about the things that you may have tried that didn't actually work. Yeah. So we can all learn from that.
That seems to be something as well. I love that. Let's end on failure in a way. But that is something we always are afraid of. But actually we learn as much individually, but I would say organizationally as well, about what doesn't work. If you look at the age old story of the scientist that invented the light bulb,
Yeah.
and it was like, you failed 99 times. They're like, no, 99 times I've discovered how not to make a light
Yeah.
bulb. But then on the 100th attempt,
Yeah.
he gets it. So that's part and parcel of innovation, developing, evolution, that we should actually just create environments and organizations where we can fail.
It's back to the psychological safety.
Back to psychological safety.
An environment where I think, let me try this. It hopefully it will work.
Yeah.
Oh no, maybe it hasn't. Okay, fine. Or maybe we identify why it didn't work.
Yes.
And we tweak it a bit.
Yeah.
And it ends up
Well,
being.
that's science, though, isn't it?
It is.
that
It
what-
is. Yeah.
Marvelous. Right. Well, it's 2 minutes to go. I just want to say thank you very much for everyone who has joined us, from across the world. Fadus, Neri, Dr. Rochelle, Zubia, Anamika, Isabella, all thank you very much for your questions and your thoughts. I really appreciate you joining us live. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation half as much as I have. This conversation will also be going on to YouTube as a podcast. We're going to put it on our podcast channels. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, push that button. It's just there. It helps us more than you know. And likewise, if you do catch up on this on the podcast channels, you're doing us a massive favor if you just go on there and give us a rating, 5 stars, obviously 5 stars, but get involved and actually support the mission. But once again, Paul Firth, Lyra, Wellbeing, MENA, thank you very much for the support,
you,
but also
Scott.
thanks for the insights.
No, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.
And that's all from us today. Thank you very much. Join us soon again on the Mental Space Live. And now I'm going to get up and go and turn the camera off. Cheers.